might object to calling this whole process a competition. I think she would probably endorse, this is great, this is collaborative, this is connecting with each other, this is showing that attorneys are full of compassion and that they care about their clients, and that we're learning, and everyone who's participated in this program so far are winners here tonight. So the real test is, can those values that guide the counseling process shine through even in a business type problem that's presented here tonight? We'll see, but I'm sure there are teams are up to the challenge. To tell you more about the problem and to welcome the judges, I'm going to turn it over to the amazing Nicole Scholl, who I can't say enough about. She was there. She was the creative mind behind all the problems in the competition, from a sexual harassment problem on the volleyball court at a local high school, to a trademark infringement case, to a rock star that had creative differences with this rock team and was looking out of a way out of a contract. Very creative, very thorough, and they challenged their teams. So Nicole, thank you for all your hard work, and we'll turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you, Professor Connors. Good evening. My name is Nicole Scholl, and I'm the Donna Jo Morse Client Counseling Chair. I, along with the Competition Associate, Gabrielle Bruno, would like to welcome you to this evening's final round. Before we begin, we would like to extend our gratitude to Mr. John Morse, Donna Jo's husband, Mr. Lawrence Yance, Donna Jo's father, and Patty Wenzel, Donna Jo's sister, for joining us tonight in our remote audience. Tonight, you will see our two final teams engaged in a client counseling session. Each of the consultation sessions is designed as an initial meeting between a client and an attorney. Tonight, the client will be following the fact pattern that is outlined in the program. The competitor's objective is to learn as many facts as possible, apply the law, and advise the client. Each competitor has 30 minutes to do this. Following the 30-minute consultation session, each competitor has 10 minutes for a self-evaluation. To judge our event this evening, please welcome the Honorable Christina Riva, Mr. Stephen Younger, and Ms. Lisa Murillo. The Honorable Christina Riva was elected by the people in the 3rd Judicial District to serve as the Justice of the Supreme Court of the State of New York in 2015. Prior to beginning her term, she held various positions in the court system for the Office of the Court Administration in the New York State Supreme Court 3rd Department Appellate Division, including Special Projects Counsel to the Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for courts outside New York City, and Special Projects Counsel to the Presiding Justice of the Appellate Division, 3rd Department. Before working in the judiciary, Judge Riva was an associate at Nixon Peabody, where she practiced labor employment law and commercial litigation. She also served as an Assistant Attorney General for the State of New York Litigation Bureau. Judge Riva's additional public service includes appointments first as General Counsel and then as Deputy Director for the City of Albany Community Department Agency. She originally began her career in public service with the City of Albany Corporation's Counsel Office. Judge Riva is a member of the Albany Law School Board of Trustees, the Albany County Access to Justice Committee, and is a past president of the Albany County Bar Association. She has also served multiple terms of the New York State Bar Association House of Delegates. Stephen Younger has more than 35 years of experience as a business litigator. As a seasoned trial lawyer, he has tried many cases in federal and state courts and before arbitration panels. Mr. Younger's clients include financial institutions, hedge funds, venture capital firms, and also multinational conglomerates who become more involved in commercial, securities, insurance, and real estate disputes. He has an extensive practice representing European and Latin American companies in U.S.-related matters, and he regularly handles trust and estates litigations. Mr. Younger is the state delegate for New York to the ABA's House of Delegates, where he chairs the New York delegation. He chairs the ABA's Issues of Concern to the Profession Committee and is a member of the steering committee for the ABA's nominating committee. Moreover, he is a past chair of the ABA's International Mediation Committee and its Task Force on International Trade and Legal Service. He previously served as the ABA's representative to the United Nations Economic and Social Council. In addition, Mr. Younger graduated magna cum laude from Albany Law School after graduating cum laude from Harvard University. A longtime trustee of Albany Law School, Mr. Younger is past president of its National Alumni Council and is a recipient of the school's Distinguished Alumni Award. Ms. Morello is an experienced government relations attorney and skilled lobbyist. She provides legislative strategy and regulatory counsel before government agencies on issues spanning healthcare, higher education and the professions, financial services, transit and transportation, racing and gaming, and economic development initiatives. Drawing on her experience of legal and legislative practice, Ms. Morello has gained the confidence of clients who rely on her success in government policy, process, and advocacy. Ms. Morello brings to the table a clear understanding of the politics, issues, and the laws surrounding them in order to educate key policymakers, lend credibility to her client's position, and attain their advocacy goals. Ms. Morello maintains professional contacts with the federal, state, and local government officials, having served in both New York State and New York City government. Prior to her years in private practice, she served as assistant legislative representative for the City of New York Mayor's Office. Ms. Morello began her career with the New York State Assembly as Chief of Staff Counsel to the Chairman of the Standing Committee on Housing, where she negotiated housing policy on behalf of the Chairman. Additionally, Ms. Morello graduated from Western New England School of Law after obtaining her bachelor's degree from Siena College. To our three judges, thank you so much for volunteering your time tonight. We are incredibly grateful to have you. Our final teams this evening are Kathryn Daniels and Rebecca LaPoint and Robert Blackstock and Ruchi Patel. Serving tonight as the client, Alex Simmons, will be 1L Amelia Reuter. And finally, our moot court board member, Michelle Bodden, will be serving as our official timekeeper. The competitors must abide by the designated time limits. However, the judges, in their discretion, may allow additional time. Our first team to compete tonight will be Kathryn Daniels and Rebecca LaPoint. I'll now turn things over to Judge Riva, and when the judges and competitors are ready, she will let the competition begin.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here in this final round of this competition. Before we get started, can we please do a sound check?
Yes, our competitors are coming in this second.
Okay.
While they come in, is my volume okay?
Yes, your volume is perfect.
I'll mute.
I'll do a sound check as well.
Oh,
Can you hear me okay?
all right. Can we do a sound check to the competitors, please? Can you please say something to make sure we can hear you?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi.
All right. So we can get started now.
Very well, thanks. Come on over. Hi, how are you? Hi, nice to meet you. Good to see you. Please have a seat. Awesome. Thank you so much. Of course. Welcome. How are you? Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you? Doing well. My name is Rebecca LaPoint, and this is my colleague, Kathryn Daniels. Hi. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you as well.
So thank you for meeting us in person and taking precautions. We know these are strange times, so.
Yeah, it's definitely getting used to.
Yeah. Before we start, do you prefer Ms. Simmons or is Alex okay?
You guys can call me Alex. It's totally fine. That's great. Thank you. Well, so what we're going to do today is listen to your story and start thinking of ways we can help. We're going to be asking a lot of questions, and if there's anything you can't remember or you don't know, that's completely fine. If you want to take a break, that's absolutely fine. You can take a break, get you water. We just want to go at your pace.
Okay, awesome. And so everything that we talk about today will be confidential. We're bound by attorney-client privilege. So we really encourage you to be as open and honest with us as possible so that we can help you to the best of our ability. All right, sounds great. Perfect. And so before we start, just so we're going to be taking notes, just so you know, so we can look back later. And then at the end of the conversation, if you decide that you want to move forward with representation, we'll talk to you about our engagement letter and our fee arrangement and the terms of our representation. All right, awesome, great.
So to start, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
So I'm from Albany. I grew up here, went to school here. Basically all 36 years of my life I've lived in the city. So
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So very familiar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were able to find us okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. That's really great. And so from what we spoke to our paralegal about, what we know about why you're here is that you work at Trinity Arena downtown and are interested in learning more about the legal and contractual obligations after COVID-19.
Yeah.
So that's what we know. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about why you're here?
So, yeah, like you said, I'm a venue manager at Trinity Arena. I have been for a couple of years now, and there's a specific contract that went through. It was arranged sometime in September 2019 that, unfortunately, due to COVID, the contract has now, the person who brokered the contract, Harry Smith, had to back out of the contract from his sound entertainment production company. Unfortunately, due to COVID, he felt that it was best to not hold the event that we were supposed to. But that kind of puts me in a tough position. It puts the company, Trinity Arena, in a tough position. So I'm kind of here just to get some general information about the legal aspects of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you do there on your duties as the venue manager?
Sure. So I took over for the venue manager, and that gave me some authorized abilities over the company, especially this branch in Albany. I mean, I worked there summers and stuff since I was even in high school. So I've been with them for a while, and as venue manager, I have specific powers over like hiring and firing and financial obligations, signing powers, that kind of thing, all over the company at that point.
Okay.
And then could you talk a little bit more about Harry Smith and what his role in this?
Yeah, so Harry Smith is a promoter that I've worked with before. He works for the company Sound Entertainment. Specifically for this contract in 2019, he had brought together a 2-week music festival that was supposed to happen in August of 2020. Headlining new artists every night, having different events throughout the day, using our space. We've worked with them before, they're great. It's just that because of COVID, things went south pretty quickly.
Okay, and so to get some information about the venue, is this 2-week music festival that he was planning with you guys, is that sort of like a larger event, or is that sort of on par with the events that you put on?
It's pretty typical for what we usually put on. The contract was no different than any other contract we've done before. So it was pretty standard for what we do. Some events are smaller, some are a lot bigger when we have an in-house event happening for a month, but this one, 2 weeks is roughly about what we deal with normally.
Okay.
And so Harry Smith wanted to back out because of COVID, and you're looking to see what the options are as far as still holding this festival?
Well, I don't know they've canceled at this point. So I want to know more about the ramifications of that canceling with the contract. We've already had the deposit put down on the event, which is half, it's 50% of the rent for the complete event anyway. So it is frustrating with that, because that puts us in a really weird spot as a company because of the money aspect of it.
Yes, absolutely. And so just to clarify, it was the deposit, was Harry Smith gave that deposit, or is it deposits that you as the venue have deposit or given to other vendors?
No, so they have to pay a deposit, which is 50% of the overall rent cost for the event. So I think it was $35,000 that they had to pay us for $70,000. It's $5,000 a day for how long they're there. They have to pay us half of that in advance when the contract is signed, which was September 2019.
Okay, and so if I'm doing my math correctly, and I am an attorney, I'm not a specialist in math, but that would be $35,000 they put down.
Yep.
Okay. And then, so you had mentioned that you worked with Harry a lot, Harry Smith, and Sound Entertainment is his company.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been working with Harry Smith?
Sound Entertainment has been a company that Trinity Arena's worked with on and off for years. It's a pretty sound relationship, and that's another concern. It's just I don't want to jeopardize that relationship with them, because they're such a great vendor. I mean, I have good relationships with even Harry as a person from working with them over the years.
Of course, in negotiating these 2-week-long festivals, I'm sure brings you pretty close.
Oh yeah.
So a concern would be just making sure that at the end of the day, your business relationship with Harry Smith and his company is sound.
Yes.
Okay.
That's definitely a goal if we can get that, while also being concerned for my company.
Your business objectives, of course, absolutely.
So could you talk a little bit more about what the current status is of this relationship? Like, is Harry trying to get some of the deposit back, or?
That's something actually, that's one of the reasons I'm here, is I'm kind of trying to get ahead of any sort of issue that may arise. I don't want to be put in a position where I'm behind the curve on it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, is Trinity Arena going to have to refund that rent or that deposit to them, even though the contract has fallen through at this point? I mean, the contract, it puts us in a really, like I said, a really tough position, because we have budgeted out the rent already for the 2020 fiscal year. So refunding that would put a really big dent into our company's profits, into our operations at this point, especially since we don't know when the pandemic will end. I mean, my employees, I want to be able to keep them in a good position, because we are like family at Trinity. So I don't want to put them into a bad spot or have me in a bad spot with everything.
Of course. Absolutely. And so do you have a copy of the contract that you signed with Harry?
Didn't bring it with me, but I could definitely get it for us at a further date.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Just a little bit more about Trinity Arena. What is the status of the arena right now? Is it open? Are you doing any events?
Unfortunately, most of the events have had to have been canceled due to COVID. We hold like in-house events for production companies since the regulations have gone down. We've been able to reopen some things, but not a lot. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So sort of operating on a minimum of what you can at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, it's hard to plan moving forward, given, of course, like you said, we don't know the predictability of this.
Exactly.
And so you mentioned that this was a standard contract that you had signed with Harry Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember, we can absolutely look at the contract, but do you remember specific terms, other than the deposit, do you remember specific terms of what would be involved in that 2-week music festival?
Just nothing too out of the ordinary about the festival itself. Like I said, we're going to be doing different people each night, different performers each night, bringing in different names, new people, some really well-known people in the industry. It would have been a pretty standard event for what we normally hold during the summer, especially in August, which is peak season for us. But nothing out of the ordinary contract-wise, standard, typical clauses.
Great.
And so on that note of clauses, with the deposit in particular, do you remember any of the language regarding that clause?
So I don't know of any refund policy. We know that we have a no refund policy if the vendor or if the production company cancels with us. There is a clause in there that I do recall that talks about neither party is liable if there's like an act of God or governmental restrictions or anything like that. But I don't know if the pandemic of COVID plays into any of that as well, or if that would affect anything.
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned that you have a lot of obligations as venue manager. Can you, because the venue is a limited liability corporation, do you have the operating agreement, or is there one that you can reference or can get your hands on?
I definitely would have that. I'd be able to get my hands on it for sure.
Okay.
And so I'm wondering, back to, you said that there is a clause of no refund if the vendor is the one who cancels, and that neither party is liable for certain things. Remember a clause about neither party being liable for government regulations. Has Harry Smith reached out to you or mentioned anything to you about any of these clauses, or say before he even maybe does, would you be interested in negotiating, and if you want to keep his business, maybe taking part of this deposit for future events with him?
That would definitely be a potential outcome that, like, obviously we could look into. I just don't know, like, the more short-term financial effects, but I mean, if that's something that we could look into based on the original contract, then that'd be great.
About the venue, Trinity. How many employees do you have at the venue?
The core company operates roughly, like when we're not in season or we're not running events every other week, we usually have roughly 20 to 30 employees who run the venue, do upkeep, keep like maintenance work and that kind of thing. And then our outside vendors that we bring in to do more specific jobs obviously gets a lot wider than that. But the core Trinity family that I'm concerned about is roughly like 20 to 30 people.
Yeah, and so I can really hear the concern that you have for your employees because, of course, you feel maybe you're a little responsible for their well-being, of course. Yeah. And so would you say that it's a goal of yours to make sure that they're doing or that they're taking care of the employees? Because like you said, you have business interests in this deal with Harry Smith. So you have interest with maintaining that relationship with him, but as well as interest maintaining your own business and your family, like you said.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you mentioned the culture is like a family, and you said you had worked there for years since you were in high school, I believe.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit more about your experience there?
Yeah. So I actually was able to work there summers and like part-time during the school year when I was in high school. So then while working there and interning and doing a bunch of things there, I decided that I was going to be able to have a career in the music arena. So I went to school for a business degree, specializing in running a music arena, got a job back at Trinity, was able to stay in the area, and then they hired me as the venue manager only a year or two after interning for it.
Good for you. Sounds like you're a very hard worker.
I try.
And so I'd like to know, at the time that you signed this contract was back in September of 2019, correct?
Yes.
At the time, would you call that the usual course of business in your dealings with Harry Smith, where it was sort of the same, I'm not really sure exactly what I'm trying to say, but it was a standard negotiation, it was the same contract, as you said, same course of dealings, or was there anything that jumped out at you as different this round?
No, I mean, it was pretty standard contract, dealt with them, like I said, dealt with them before, had a really good relationship. They deposited the money pretty rapidly. I mean, like I said, we've done it before. We got the $35,000, it went into the account, and then it was used, some of it was used for upkeep and that kind of thing. And that money, obviously, we still have and have to use as much as we can for the event, for the venue.
Absolutely.
And for that contract, were you one of the signing parties on behalf of Trinity Arena?
Yes, I was.
Was anyone else a part of that negotiation from Trinity Arena?
Like what do you mean?
It was, so Harry Smith, and then from Trinity Arena was there, and you, and then on your side of it, was there anyone else involved in the negotiations?
No, since it was pretty standard. I mean, Harry has the same authorized ability that I do with Trinity, just with sound entertainment. So we pretty much do these dealings just us on a standard contract that we've used before.
Okay. And okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. You have the signing authority to make these kinds of contracts.
Yes.
Okay, and then Harry Smith is in a similar setup with sound entertainment, and he has the same authority essentially.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you have this interest in making sure that you have a sound business relationship with Harry Smith. It sounds like it's a really valuable business partnership that you, of course, don't want to muddle in any way. But of course, you have your business that you need to take care of and run smoothly because that's your job at the end of the day. And like you said, you have a family within Trinity Arena to take care of. So I can completely understand that. Other than those two, I guess I don't want to assume, but legal action is something that we would try to want to avoid in the situation just to maintain your relationship with Harry Smith and a positive reputation with him.
Yeah.
Okay.
As much as possible. I mean, of course, whether or not like the company's liable or like I would be personally liable for the refund, like that's like all these things are going through my head. That's I guess why I'm here. So.
Okay, so I heard you say whether you would be personally liable for any of this. Are you concerned about personal liability for your employees and making sure they're okay, or personal liability in regards to contracts with Harry Smith?
I mean, issues like this really haven't arisen before, so I don't know if, since I was the one who signed the contract and I was the one who had that authorized ability, the $35,000 that we took from them, is there an element of personal liability there? I don't know about that. So
Okay. Well, that's good to know, but of course that is obviously a concern of yours. Yeah.
And just to clarify, when you signed the contract, you were signing that as a agent for Trinity Arena and not like a personal contract between you and Harry Smith.
No, yeah.
I was signing it as like authorized as a venue manager. So for you, I do think that should be because Trinity Arena is a limited liability company, and you are a manager for Trinity Arena. Typically, what happens with LLCs is that it shields you as a manager from personal liability. Again, we have to look at your contract because it does matter what the language is in the operating agreement and in
The articles of the organization.
Article of the organization, exactly. So the sooner that you can get that to us, the sooner that we'll be able to help you with that question in particular as well. Okay, awesome.
And looking ahead, are there other instances where because of COVID you've signed a contract with other vendors or parties and the same thing is happening, or is this specifically a targeted issue with Harry Smith?
This is definitely one of the more prevalent issues that we've had to deal with just because it is such a large event and the deposit was so large and the financial detriment to the company if this goes not in our favor would be more severe than other contracts. I mean, other contracts it was easier to work out just because maybe the deposit hadn't been put down yet or a contract hadn't even been signed yet. So this is a pretty isolated incident. It'll also be able to tell us how we can deal with other ones in the future. But this is definitely the biggest issue on my mind at this point.
Okay. Yeah.
One thing, I mean, I know COVID is just having impacts on things that we could never even imagine. Has the company taken advantage of any government, like payroll assistance programs or anything like that, just in case if something were to happen with the deposit? Have you explored any of the government options?
Not that I know of. Most of like how we pay our employees and our operations costs come out of the budget for the fiscal year. I haven't seen any sort of notification that we have extra funds to have employment assistance or anything like that yet. So I don't, not that I'm aware of.
And so, again, I don't want to assume, but if, for example, you had to return the $35,000 to Mr. Smith, that would severely impact your ability to pay your employees because, and as you mentioned, this is a large deposit, and so because it's so large, that's why it's a matter of concern.
I mean, yeah, 30,000 of the 35 has already been used for specific rent costs for ourselves personally, upkeep. It's been budgeted to pay our employees. Like returning it would present a huge issue. That 30,000 is already spent almost.
Okay, so 30,000 of it is basically already spent, and there's about 5,000 left that you would have.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I'm curious, what would, if there was an ideal, obviously broadly speaking, the ideal would be making sure your relationship with Harry Smith is intact, but then also making sure that we could find a way to make sure you can have the finances to run the venue. Avoiding legal action if necessary because you want to maintain you're balancing those two things. If we could think of creative ways, creative alternatives to make sure that the venue's running smoothly, and that way you'd be able to, like Becca said, potentially use the deposit for a future music festival when hopefully knock on wood, COVID's all over. That type of alternative resolution would be interesting to you.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely something that I'd be willing to explore. At this point, just speaking somewhat casually, anything can get us out of the woods on this would be great. Whichever way that takes us while maintaining those relationships.
And would it be okay if we started to look at, because you said you have, it's about 20 or 30 employees, so it's a smaller business. If we're looking to exploring some options for possible relief for small businesses that could help maybe get you through COVID, would that be something that you'd be interested in us doing as well?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely something to look into, because like I said, if I have to return that 35, like I said, 30 if it's already been spent, and just the stuff that's left over, I mean, most of that 5,000 is still in the account, but nothing really, that doesn't pay much to the bills when I'm operating such a large operation.
Right. Are there other managers with the same, at the venue, are there other managers with the same level of authorization to make these sorts of contractual deals?
No, as the venue manager, there are other branches of Trinity Arena, other places, but for this specific venue here in Albany, I'm basically the overarching manager. I have assistants under me, but they don't have authorized power over the bank accounts or anything like that. They don't have access to any of that money or the signing powers.
Okay, and is the LLC headquartered in Albany or somewhere else?
I think it is headquartered here, but we don't have like I don't have contact with that office as often as the other branches do.
Okay.
How many other branches are there?
As far as I know of in New York, there's at least 3, but like in the major cities out west and a couple down in the city.
Okay.
And back to, just to clarify with Harry Smith, he has not approached you yet about this deposit and possibly getting it back.
Not yet. No.
Okay.
And do you have contact with the other branches? Because of course this isn't a singular issue, perhaps. So do you have contact with other branches regarding things like this? Or is it just basically insulated with your communication?
It's pretty insulated. I mean, this would be something that bringing it to the board of directors and this like chief executive officer would be something that we would look into, but I wanted to make sure that for me personally and that personal liability issue and also the company, just finding the best options before I even take any issue to them at this point.
Okay.
And just to clarify, with our representation here, are you looking for us to represent you as an individual and with your concerns about your personal liability, or are you looking for us to represent Trinity Arena?
I guess the answer to that would be yes. Just on the issues of if there was a chance that I would be found personally liable for any amount of that deposit or any sort of issue there, would that, like, you'd be able to represent me on those issues, but if it does become just a contractual issue between Trinity Arena and Sound Entertainment, then obviously that would be also an option, I guess.
Okay. Do you know off the top of your head if Trinity, is there other branches, if they have other representation with other law firms?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Just double checking.
And this, you also might not be sure as well. Are you aware if Harry Smith and his company have any sort of legal representation?
Yeah,
Okay.
again,
We can always figure that out.
Yeah.
All right, so just to recap here, we're trying to maintain the relationship with Harry, maintain this, keeping this deposit, and you're interested in exploring the opportunity of possibly getting assistance from small business options from the government, So moving forward, I guess some things that we definitely need to look at is the operating agreement and the contract between you and Harry, or between the arena and Harry Smith, so that we can better understand the issue and the actual language of the contract and see what we can really do to help you moving forward.
Yeah, and it looks like your case has merit, and I think it would be important for, obviously, for us to do our homework, and then if we could assign you homework with getting those items, those documents, so we could read those over and do our research there.
And I would also say moving forward, if Harry does reach out for you for any reason, don't delete those communications. Keep everything that you have that's paper, take notes on things just so that when we come and have these conversations, we have something to reference. That'd be really helpful moving forward. And I think we just need to start to explore the language of the contract, what exactly the implications are going to be, whether or not that deposit can be kept, and if possibly we need to, do negotiations with Harry moving forward. So we'll see. Does that sound like a plan to you?
Yeah, it definitely sounds good moving forward.
And just to clarify, if Harry, until we figure out more information, I think it would be best to keep communication with Harry and Sound Entertainment to a minimum, just to be safe until we learn more information. So we have your contact information from our administrative assistant. And if you would like to move forward with us in representing you, then we can discuss our fee arrangement, which is a $100 an hour fee. Because we are associates for the firm. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
And we can send you home with a copy of our engagement letter. Yes, we can email it to you because as not to give physical copies or anything.
No, yeah, that'll be something definitely to look into for sure.
Great. Okay, great.
Perfect. So today is Tuesday. We're going to send the engagement letter to you that's spelled out a representation. And if you could, in the meantime, get those documents to us. And we're going to start doing research regarding the contracts, what exactly it means for COVID and some of these clauses in there, and exploring some options as far as small business loans or help in the future.
And then we can give you a call maybe Friday morning with an update on our research and see if you have any questions about the engagement letter. And then I know you have our contact information as well.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll send you out.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Of course. Stay out of the rain if it's raining.
Shake your hand. Thanks so much. Thank you very much.
What do you think?
I think we definitely need to look at the contract agreement between Harry Smith or Sound Recording and Trinity Arena. I think that will be telling. I also think we should get our hands on the operating agreement and making sure that Alex has the authority to just to make sure all the buttons are buttoned. And then also, I think moving forward, just making sure that Harry Smith has authorization as well, thinking in the future to sign that agreement.
I also think it'll be important to look at the articles of organization and operating agreement to see whether or not there's any language about whether or not the managers are indemnified from personal liability, because that did seem like a real concern for Alex. So definitely learning the language of that, learning the language of the deposit clause, and whether or not it sounded like there was a force majeure clause in there as well, and what exactly the implications are of that on the contract.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then just making sure that it was clear that her objectives were just to make sure that her company is taken care of, because it's clear that she really cares about her employees. But then I can completely understand her wanting to maintain that strong relationship with such a strong promoter. I think also it would be important to clarify what the needs are based, and maybe we'll learn more about this as we do some research, but she was a little unclear about whether we would be representing Trinity Arena or herself for personal liability. And so I think that would be important to clarify
Yes, absolutely.
as we learn more about this.
So moving forward, do you want to do some more research with the documents that she'll be sending over? I'd be interested to learn more about possible options for funding the business if something were to happen with the deposit.
Yeah, that works great. And I know that we both have her contact information, her email right here. And then maybe we can get together, do some research the next couple of days, and then get together maybe Friday afternoon and chat and see where we are. And then we can give her a call Friday morning with an update and to speak with her.
Absolutely.
All right, great.
Thank you, everyone. We will now take a brief pause for sanitation purposes before we introduce our next team.
We should come back before they die. They were having a hard time. I feel that this one again. Or maybe put it over here. Yeah, maybe right, and then like right next to the chair. Got that, got the meeting up a little bit. Sure, that was good.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to introduce our second team, Robert Blackstock and Ruchi Patel. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Judge Ryla, and when you and the competitors are all ready, the competition may commence.
Good evening. If the competitors could please, when you're seated, state your name clearly into the microphone.
Yes, my name's Robert Blackstock.
Thank you.
My name is Ruchi Patel.
Thank you. You can get started.
Again, I'm Robert Blackstock.
I'm Ruchi Patel.
Hi, how are you? Doing well, how are you? My name's Robert Blackstock, this is my partner.
Nice to meet you.
We have some waters here, some hand sanitizer if you'd like.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming in and wearing the mask and doing all this. It's a tough time, but we're all in through it. So thank you. Before we get started, going forward, how would you like to be addressed and what program would you like?
You can call me Alice, and I use she, her pronouns.
Okay. So to start off with that, we want to give you a little run through what's going to happen today. So my partner Ruchi over here, she's going to do some housekeeping issues, go through retained confidentiality, things like that. After that, we're going to ask you some general questions of what brought you in here today, kind of get a better idea of what's going on. And then after we figure that out, we'll talk about maybe some options, legal, non-legal, stuff like that. And if you have any questions throughout this process, please feel free to cut us off and jump in and ask us. We will be taking a lot of notes, so you see us scribbling things down, that's that. But you have our full undivided attention. Yeah. So would you mind just telling us in general what brought you in here today?
Yeah, so I guess I'm here just to kind of grab some general information about a specific contract that Trinity Arena, I'm the venue manager for, has now entered into, me on behalf of them with the company. But the contract is now canceled, and I want to talk about like the legal, I guess, ramifications of that and the financial issues that brings my company to the COVID and stuff.
Sure, and before we get started hearing a bit more about that, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping. So first, we just want to let you know that this meeting is confidential. Anything you say here stays here, and with that, it's really helpful to us for you to say as much as we can, as much information as you can possibly give us, so we can better assess the situation. So because of attorney-client privilege, this is a secret safe zone. This meeting is also free of charge. And at the end, we'll talk more about our retainer and decide if we want to continue working together and if you would like to retain us for representation. And with that, we'd love to hear more about the specific contract and your expectations for what you'd like ideally going forward.
Yeah, so I guess my main concern is to protect the company, Trinity Arena, and also just its employees, and I guess myself throughout all of the issues that might be brought on by this contract, not going through as it was planned to or intended. We have a contract with a vendor, Sound Entertainment, on behalf of Harry Smith, who's a promoter we've worked with before, which is really great. We had an event planned for August of 2020, where it was supposed to be a 2-week festival, bringing in different headliners every night. It's supposed to be a really great event, bringing in a lot of revenue, one of our summer-long events that we host throughout the summer. But unfortunately, due to COVID, where I thought it was a good idea to cancel it because of the big group gatherings and stuff. And I guess I need some guidance on how to move forward with that. And the ramifications that that's gonna have on Trinity, money-wise and otherwise.
So first off, do you have the contract on you by any chance right now?
I don't have it on me, but I could definitely get it. for you.
Okay, yeah, that'd be perfect, thank you. So based off of this contract you have with those, did you contract with anybody else, whether they're performers, maybe people coming in, other vendors for food or anything like that?
Yes, we hadn't had a chance to really set any of those contracts in stone by the time that they canceled.
Okay.
Which I guess was lucky in the long term, but this contract is the bigger of the contracts because it deals with the rent and the different venue usages and things like that. That comes with a lot higher of a check at the end of the day than the rest of the vendors do.
You definitely want that one.
Oh, yeah.
So can you tell us a little more about the timeline of this contract? So you said the festival was supposed to be in August 2020. The contract that you signed, when was that signed?
We signed that back in September of 2019.
Okay.
Having that in our calendar for the next year.
Right.
And I just want to clarify, did you say that Harry Smith, he was actually the one who canceled the contract?
Yeah, so Harry figured that the cancellation would be the best just because of COVID staying on longer than everybody thought it was going to back in March and everything like that. So in May, he decided that it was probably best that Sound Entertainment was going to cancel that contract with us.
And what is Harry's position or title?
Harry's a promoter that we've worked with. He has that power authorized to build those contracts and stuff on behalf of Sound Entertainment.
Okay. And you said you worked with Harry before. Have you ever had any issues with him, whether either party canceling contracts or just something came up?
This is really something that we've never dealt with before with them, especially. We usually if a contract doesn't go through, like if a promoter cancels on us, there's a no refund policy. But this has never happened with Sound Entertainment before. It's never happened with Harry before. It's never happened because of COVID before. So it's really all new territory at this point with them.
Yeah, of course, it's new territory in some ways for us too. So some of these issues coming with the contracts are going to have long-ranging ramifications. So speaking of COVID, the reason stated for the cancellation, as you mentioned earlier, was COVID, correct? Did they make any reference to any sort of government order or law regulation?
Nothing specific, no. The government, the only thing about government we have is like in the normal contracts that we deal with, the only cancellation, like any sort of exception to the refund policy or anything is like acts of God or governmental regulations. And we don't know how that would play into COVID or anything new with this pandemic, just because we don't know if it even applies.
Yeah, so those are somewhat common contractual clauses. So they're called force majeure clauses, and what essentially they do is in situations where you have this contract with someone you're both supposed to perform, and they just want to kind of cover their back in a situation where anything can happen. So like it's actually a lot of people call it an act of God clause. So those are quite common. We have seen those before. They're read differently in different states, whether read specifically, broadly, stuff like that. It also depends if there's a list of things. So when looking at a contract, that's absolutely something we'll look at.
Yeah, and we definitely need to see the language of the contract because we definitely need to see the language of the contract before we can make some specific comments on it. But generally in New York State, they tend to interpret these contracts quite narrowly. So we have to check out how things have been going. And you said that you're a manager at an LLC. Is that right? You're a manager at the LLC?
Yes, I'm the venue manager that has obviously the powers of authorized signatory. I work over the finances. I have hiring and firing powers, that kind of thing.
And is this a role you've been in for quite some time now?
I've been with Trinity Arena for a very long time, since high school actually.
Okay.
But in this position, I think I've been there a couple of years now. But I worked as the assistant to the venue manager before I was venue manager. So I know the position pretty well at this point.
That's always good, working up the corporate chain. And you individually have worked with Mr. Smith before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just off the top of your head, do you know if the venue as a whole, the LLC, do you know if it's member managed or manager managed? Is there anything you know?
It actually is, I think it is manager managed.
Manager managed, okay. Do you by any chance, and it may be something you could get to us, but a copy of the articles of organization?
I could definitely get them to you. I guess it's staying with the contract.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No problem at all. And then also, do you think you could get your hands on the operating agreement if you guys have one?
I'll definitely look into it.
Okay. That's just a written agreement. It kind of like states the certain rules and obligations that this specific LLC will follow outside of the default rules that the common law presents.
How many other managers are there at the LLC besides you?
So for this branch, our Albany branch, I'm the venue manager, so I'm the only one on my level at this point. I answer directly to the higher ups in the company organizational structure, so I answer to the CEO and the board of directors. But I'm pretty much in charge of our branch specifically.
And do you know how many employees the whole company has?
Not the whole company. I know that my branch operates with roughly 20 to 30 normal employees throughout keeping upkeep and doing maintenance and stuff between events. And then for events, we bring in outside vendors that do most of the other work. But.
And are those employees still salaried? I assume they might not be working too much because of COVID. Are they still sort of on the payroll?
We're pretty much trying to keep them as normal as it was. We don't want to put them in a bad position. I mean,
yeah,
they're like family. Our branch is pretty close, and I guess that's one of my concerns is I don't want to put them in a bad spot, especially during a tough time like this.
Exactly, yeah. Did you apply for any loans or anything ever since COVID started back in March?
Not that I don't think so. Not for the company anyway, or for myself really.
Sure. It sounds like keeping your employees, well fed as best as possible is a really big priority for you in terms of thinking about how this huge contract affects what you're going to do going forward. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's definitely a big concern, just because I do care about these people and I do want to keep them safe and keep myself in a good position and also the company keeping them in a good reputation.
Do you know if the company, by any chance, has insurance, like a business interruption insurance or something like that?
I'm not sure about the specifics. I'm sure there is a policy in place. We've never had to use it, thank goodness. So I'm not sure the specifics on that, but I could definitely get that information if it becomes relevant.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks. And when you went into this contract, did you guys have any discussions about the expectations of the contract or talk about a little bit what would happen in the event of some contingency like this? Any sort of expectations of that?
No, so these contracts are pretty standard. We've used them before for years in the past. Even with sound entertainment, I've entered into these contracts where this certain amount is due and half of that amount is put in as deposit when the contract is signed. So for this specific contract, we received $35,000 as a deposit for a $70,000 rent in this case. That's pretty standard. They give us that deposit at the time of signing the contract, and then the rest is due in full at the time of the event is put down. It's pretty all standard in the contract. There are specific clauses that are in there about like the no refund policy if a vendor cancels on us. But there is, I do remember there is something in there about how if an act of God, I think we talked about, or governmental regulation comes into play, then there's no liability on either. There's no fault on either side. So I don't know how that would play into it with the pandemic since it's a new situation.
Yeah. Could you speak to, you talked about, you've had these agreements before, and they're kind of standard terms of him paying the money up front. Was there any other time before this, maybe not, obviously not COVID, it's a recent thing, but for some reason or another, they just couldn't pay or anything like that? The money was an issue with another person?
I mean, specifically with sound entertainment, we've never had an issue. Harry and I have a pretty good relationship, and our two companies have had a pretty good relationship over the past decades even. With other people, obviously things arise where somebody faults on a contract or whatever, but it's pretty efficiently handled. So it's never been an issue like this with the pandemic being caused by something that nobody saw coming.
Yeah. Would you say your concern of yours would be your relationship with Harry? And one of those things, maybe, moving forward, you don't want to do anything that would disrupt that relationship. Like you said, you've been working with them for a while now.
I mean, yeah, if it comes to the point where they want their deposit back, the $35,000 is important to Trinity and its operations, and some of that money's already gone.
Do you know how much of the money is already gone and where it's been spent?
So, well, 30,000 of it goes to like our operations costs and things like that. And then with the rest of the 5,000, most of that is still in the company account. But the 30,000 has already been spent on and budgeted into our thing. And then, like I said, the 5,000, most of it's still in that account.
You said it's been budgeted. Do you know if it's been spent already, or is it just sort of in your, budget for the year?
Some of the 30,000 has been already spent on, like local taxes and our operating costs and maintenance and that kind of thing, since we are most of the way into 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And you've been planning for this festival, I presume, for a while since you signed it, because these are, big affairs. If you could maybe get us some of the accounting information so we could see where the money is, and that would be really helpful.
Would you say that you spending that $30,000, is that like a typical thing you do when they give you the first half of the money up front? You kind of spend that and, on reliance of that you're going to get the rest of the money and that you're going to have this money and they're going to perform?
Yeah, I mean, once the contract is signed, in a normal year where there's no COVID, say that $70,000, that's put into our 2020 budget. In January, I budgeted it into our fiscal year without obviously knowing that COVID was going to happen. So the $35,000 that we received in September has already been spent in the beginning of the year, awaiting that final amount, amounting to the rest of the $70,000.
What percentage of the $70,000 would you say is of your annual budget, or like sort of how big is your budget generally?
With contracts like that occur so often or so far in advance, most of it goes into our budget to be used. Only a percentage of it carries over into the next year.
You mentioned that this was a really big contract. Would you say this is almost like more than half of your expected revenue for the year, or sort of ballpark number?
I wouldn't say more than half, but it's definitely, it would be something that if we had to refund that $35,000, it would definitely hurt our operations. I couldn't say that it would put us under or anything, but I would have to lay off staff. We would have to cut costs in so many other ways that would hurt the people who work there and hurt the family that we kind of made. So.
Yeah, of course.
When Harry first spoke to you and told you that, he's not going to follow through the contract, did he mention by any chance if there was like specific reasons, like in terms, I know obviously COVID, but was there anything like specifically the travel ban outside states or social distancing issues and stuff like that?
It was the group gathering issues.
Yeah.
He didn't think it was a good idea, and I agree with him. I respect his decision to cancel just on a personal level, because it is a rough time for everybody, and keeping up with those social distancing and the group restrictions on large gatherings. I guess that was the reason he mostly outlined on it. But
okay.
I mean, like I said, I think it was a good call personally, but it still will affect the business, and that's my bigger concern.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary time for everybody. Nobody's really gone through this, and we just kind of got it thrown at us, so we completely understand there.
Yeah.
Are you hoping to receive the rest of the $70K, the balance of what you were supposed to get?
I mean, I don't know I guess that's a question that I would have, is that,
of course, yeah.
If this was just a breach of contract where they decided not to go through with the event, would we be able to claim that $70,000 in full? Would we be able to use that? If not, do we have to refund the deposit? Like all of these issues, and I guess that's part of my concern.
So it's very difficult to say without obviously looking at the contract and looking at the intricate nature of it. But in general, just in general contract law, typically there's different type of damages. One of which is expectancy damages, which essentially puts the party who's in loss there what they expected to get. There's reliance damages, kind of makes them whole. There's these different types of damages that the law has in place for in a situation where somebody is harmed. that they get back to where they were before. I guess the law's trying to help everybody out in a way.
Yeah. And so we'd have to sort of look at the specific cases in New York State and thinking about what the courts are doing with COVID. Again, this is unprecedented. We don't know how courts are adjudicating these types of issues. So we'd have to look into that and try to see who's getting money back from contracts, if contracts are breached, and in your case are canceled.
Something we're gonna have to do some outside research on. And I just want to kind of, backtrack over what we kind of talked about recently. So it seems like, the biggest issue is this contract. You received the $35,000, you're expecting the other $35,000, but part of that money is already spent. Part of it's going to employees, you're worried about them. So you essentially, I guess your number one priority, would you say, is keeping this current $35,000 that you've already spent, or would it be to get the full amount?
I think definitely we could make do with just 35. Like with that relationship between us and Sound Entertainment with Harry, I don't want to hurt that by saying like you owe us this $70,000 because you canceled because of COVID. I don't even know if that's something we could do.
Yes.
But I mean, we could operate with the 35, and that would be doable for us. But I guess my biggest priority is just to keep Trinity Arena in good standing, financially and reputation-wise, and also just take care of the employees.
Of course.
And including myself, just because, like, since I signed the contract, I don't know if there would be personal liability over that. Like, I know I can't shell out $35,000 for that anyway, or the $30,000 that's already been spent. I don't know if that would even play into an issue.
Again, that's something you'd have to look into, but typically an LLC, a legal liability company, they have essentially like a liability shield that protects you. It gives you pros and cons of different corporations, pros of a corporation and cons of partnerships, this and that. So it's kind of like a mix of many, but it will give you some protections in terms of your actions as an agent of a company, if you are, or your actions as the company. It gives you a shield. There are specific situations where that shield can be pierced, veil piercing it's called. But those are certain situations that, again, we'd have to look at, but just so,
Yeah, to make a long story short, you wouldn't have to pay the 35.
Yeah.
Personally, you wouldn't be personally liable for it.
Rather,
it would fall on the LLC. Do you happen to know if any of the tickets for the festival have been refunded, or sort of what happens with any tickets you sold?
I mean, we canceled, Harry canceled the event in May. So luckily there wasn't too much of a ramification on ticket sales, just we hadn't released full details on the season yet and that kind of thing and the specifics of the event. So there weren't any like ticket sales lost or anything.
So you haven't sold any tickets?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Since this contract with Harry, have you guys been able to host anything at the venue?
We hold like in-house things for more like production classes and events and stuff like that, but it's all been done to like the government regulations and stuff like that. We can't really do many big events, and I mean certain contracts have been canceled without issue just because of like deposits not being put in or contracts not being finalized or something like that. So, but this is definitely the biggest and the most problematic at this point, because the deposit's already been put in and the money's already been spent.
Of course.
Out of the remaining 35K that you'd be hoping to get in normal situations, how much of that would have been spent more in salaries or operations?
I mean, all of that 30,000 that's already been
spent and allocated.
Yeah,
that's all that you would have spent on salaries out of the total 70K.
Out of the total 70K, yeah, because that the rest of the money that would come in August would go into another. It wasn't budgeted for the first half of the year.
And that would go into some expenses later as the festival, got going and got moving.
Yeah.
When Harry first came to you, and he said, I want to cancel this contract, and he told you the reasons, obviously COVID. Did you by any chance offer him any, other options in terms of social distancing or cutting down the size of the concert?
I mean, it was planned to be a pretty big operation, and
we're all living in an unprecedented space, so, I mean, we obviously could have brainstormed, but it was an independent decision on his part to notify me that, Sound Entertainment did not want to move forward with the event, and they canceled because of those regulations.
Okay.
And when did you spend some of the money in operations?
So in January, we budget everything out to be spent. We, over the course of the months, we spent that 30,000. It was budgeted, like I said, for maintenance, anything that could have come up, especially when COVID started. It continued to fund the salaries of our employees, as well as other income. But the 30,000 definitely went towards those things, like I said.
And do you have any upcoming contracts?
None that weren't able to be avoided. We definitely have enough business still coming in that we're able to, with this 35,000 at least, stay somewhat operational. There is still a concern always that we're going to have to lay off employees. I definitely don't want to do that. But
Since we got a little time.
Yeah. We're definitely, if this issue could be resolved in a favorable way for us, we would be able to continue operations, but without any sort of other contracts becoming an issue, hopefully.
Yeah, of course. It's a tough situation for everybody, and especially with this, when you have so many things to balance. You're trying to balance, your employees, yourself, your company, but you also have this good relationship with Harry Smith, and you guys have worked for a while. So we can understand that can be very difficult. And hopefully, it'll be able to solve the situation where, everybody's happy and you get to continue those relationships. Personally, I think I asked all the questions I want to know about this specific situation. I'm not sure if you have any questions, other questions.
Just if there's anything else you've thought of as we've been chatting, any details that you think might be helpful that we may have not hit upon yet.
I mean, nothing that, it obviously it puts us all in a rough spot. Having that 30,000 already spent,
right?
I don't know how I would be able to repay that. I can't really balance everybody's salaries on most of this 5,000 that's left over, and keeping operations, I guess, is my biggest concern.
Of course. And these are kind of difficult meetings because it's tough to give you peace of mind without truly looking at these contracts, your agreement, the articles of organization and things like that. But like I mentioned earlier, typically in these LLC situations, you are personally protected, and rather the liabilities on a corporation. We can't make any promises. It's something we definitely have to look at. But those are the general standards of those sort of contracts.
Yeah, and we could look into some maybe federal loans. There are economic disaster loans that you could apply for as you're a small business, and any other federal relief funds that we might be able to find if we continue working together.
Mm-hmm. So I think a good idea for all of us, I think moving forward, if you could get us those things, the insurance forms, if you have that, the articles of organization, if you have an operating agreement, that'd be great. The actual contract. Is there anything else on this?
And any accounting of when the money was spent, how much, and to whom, and that sort of stuff, so we can figure out where the money is. But we can send you this list in an email, because it's kind of long for you to remember.
Yeah, we're throwing a lot at you. Sorry about that. But I think a good place to start is if we could get that, and me and Ruchi could spend some time looking those over, and hopefully schedule a meeting maybe in these next few days when we have a better idea and these more solid answers. I know we threw out some legal options, but those are kind of just off the top of our head without really digging deep into all this information. So I think that's something we could look at, get some more answers for you, and then we can meet and talk about the options moving forward if that works with you.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll briefly just tell you a little bit about some non-legal options. So there are some non-legal ways that you could go about solving this problem. We recognize that your relationship with Harry is really important, and so there are a couple things that we could look into: arbitration, mediation, negotiation. A mediation would be something where we sit you guys down with a third party, and you guys sort of talk about what's going on and try to come to a resolution. And we can talk more about those options if they seem like something that you'd be more interested in, because they're a little less costly, a little less public. I know you mentioned your reputation is important to you. And with that, I will talk a little bit about our retainer agreement. So retainer is $100 an hour for research costs and anything else that we might need to work on. And if we both, just both of us decide that we want to continue working together and make a contract out of it, we can both sign that and we'll send you copies so you can look over the fine print and see if you have any questions.
Just the current meeting was free of charge, and the next one will be free of charge. But if we decide to move forward after, we kind of figured things out and talk to you, that's that information. And just going back to the insurance, another thing, non-legal thing we could do is maybe look at your insurance policy. And if you want to, there are certain clauses in business scenarios, so that's something we could look over too. Thank you very much for coming in. Obviously, this is a difficult time, so hopefully this will be solved soon, and hopefully this whole thing will be over soon. We'll all be able to go to a concert.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. And we wish you the best of luck to you and your employees, and hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That one over, Ruchi.
I'll put that one out too. She knew a lot of information that was really helpful to us.
Absolutely.
She's got a long list of homework of documents that we could look at and that would be helpful to us.
These are always difficult situations where, you really can't give any, solid answers, absolute answers. Yeah, without really like, going through all these documents and, combing through them and whatnot. Without looking at it, it seems like, it's a member managed LLC. She seems like she is a member of it and she is acting within her authority. I would have to look at some agency law issues and whatnot.
Yeah, I see what board she had to sign the contract in the first place, just as like housekeeping.
Yes. I don't think Pearson the Veil would come in. That's typically in a situation where like somebody's like acting completely negligent or they're treating themselves as the same as the corporation.
It sounded like she wasn't doing that, but in the accounting, we could take a look at it.
Yes. And then in terms of the contract, maybe frustration of purpose is something that comes to mind. Impracticability and possibility. Those are all some things I think we should look into, apart from, the force majeure clause.
Yeah, because those are sort of separate tracks we could look into. The clause would be helpful if, helpful to whichever party. Impracticability, frustration of purpose could be some other avenues we could use or think about.
It does seem, she said there is a, a force majeure clause or an act of God's clause. And I think she meant, she did say it's for acts of God and governmental intervention. COVID is technically a pandemic, epidemic sort of thing, like a health issue, but it seems like the reason he canceled the contract was inadvertently COVID, yes, but because the government intervened and said there couldn't be these, there's social distancing and travel and things such as that.
In August 2020, a lot of stay-at-home orders and regulations had already been passed in March, and so it might have been illegal. We could look into that too, but it might have been illegal for them to have the festival in any capacity, really.
Yeah. I think another thing we should look at and maybe talk to the rest of the firm to see if they do a conflicts check, whether it's Harry or maybe some people they've worked with before. That's something we should probably have some research into.
Yeah, I'm interested in looking into some more about the federal relief stuff. They didn't seem to have applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, which is closed now, unfortunately. But the economic injury disaster loans have opened back up in June, and they might be accepting applications, especially because it sounded like she had a small business. So we could sort of look into see if there's any more safety nets from the government, from the federal government in New York State, for keeping her employees afloat.
Yeah, I haven't taken contracts in a while, but maybe promissory estoppel. It seems like there's a little reliance on.
It does, and she spent some of the money.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great idea, and if she's spent the money on reliance, and she's spent the money back in September 2019 when nobody knew there was a pandemic.
Absolutely.
That might help her case.
I think we should keep in mind though the balance of she wants the money back, but this is also somebody she's worked with before. So we have to balance that. So that's really important. Her employees and herself are important to her. So these are all things I think we should keep in mind. I did cut you off a few times in the beginning. I apologize for that. it's difficult with these masks, like it's very itchy and whatnot. So sorry about that.
And I did my housekeeping a little bit late. I guess I should remember to make sure to do that. That's our stuff at the beginning, so they know about the confidentiality before they start. If anyone starts telling us something, but that's something that we can continue to work on in further client counseling meetings.
Absolutely. And I think going forward, we'll wait till she sends us that information. Once we get that, we go, comb through those, kind of look for the specifics. We can email her, find out her availability, set up a meeting for us once we get that done. And hopefully we'll be able to solve this and find a solution for her that benefits her, her company, and everybody around.
Yeah, and her relationships with the community and Harry, the sound company, because I assume those relationships are really important going forward.
Absolutely.
As a music venue.
Yeah. I don't know about you or me. Do you have anything else? I think I'm done.
I think I'm done too. I think there's a lot of stuff that we could look into if she finds a retainer and we decide to keep on going. And I'm excited for this case. I think it will be really interesting to see how COVID plays into things. Hopefully we can get her some help.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary times for everybody, so let's hope for the best. So yeah, I think we have a solid game plan. Some research. We'll meet with her, go over that. And on that note, have a wonderful night. And yeah, I'll see you soon, Ruchi.
I'll see you soon, Rob.
At this time, we're going to take another group pause for sanitation purposes, and then we will get our ceremony while judges are deliberating for our after quarter and semifinalists. While our judges are out deliberating, I would like to take the opportunity to say thank you to some of the people without whom the competition would have never been the success it was this year. First and foremost, I would like to thank my consultation, Gabrielle Bruno. Gabrielle did a tremendous amount of work. Gabrielle did a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes and kept us organized. I'm so thankful to have her as my associate for this semester and next. Next, I would like to thank Joseph Patel, our LaPoint Board Executive Director, who is an incredible source of support. He helped out with so many of the little aspects, and I appreciate his patience and kindness. I'd also like to thank all the other members of the LaPoint Board for all their assistance this year with Zoom. I would like to thank all the attorneys who volunteered their time to come judge the competitions and all of our first-year students who volunteered as clients. I would also like to extend thanks to Teresa Colbert, John Collins, and as well as Dean Clunan and Dina Willett for all of their assistance making this competition successful. Lastly, I would like to give a tremendous thank you to the Client Counseling Competition Advisor, Professor Joseph Connors. This competition would not have been successful without his help and support. Thank you for everything. At this time, I would like to present awards to all of our octo-finalists, quarter-finalists, and semi-finalists. When I call your name, if you are here in person, please come down to receive your award. First, our octo-finalists this year were Serena Ahmed, Kathryn Cumming, Trevor Degree, Taylor Ferrier, Elizabeth Harmon, Mark Jordan, Joshua Marcel, Stephen Marks, Melanie Murata, Abigail McCormick Foley, Eric Perkowski, Amanda Potter, Graham Thompson, Jesse Verdon, Emily Williams, and Riel Zerali. Our quarterfinalists this year were Caitlin Curtin, Andrew Gagliardi, Victoria Gamble, Albert Bauer,
Distance, please.
Oh, sorry.
Our semifinalists this year were Hunter Chemick, Martin Michaels, Thank you to all of our competitors this year. You did an incredible job. While our judges are out deliberating, please sit tight until we have our announcement of our winners.
So the panel's ready to come back.
Yeah. Please rise and honorable judges. You may be seated. At this time, I'd like to pass things over to the judges to give their comments and announce our winner. Oh no. Oh no, hold on.
All right, am I on? Should I start?
Mhm.
Can you all hear me in the audience over at Albany Law? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so before we announce the winner, we just each want to give a little bit of feedback to both teams. So first of all, it's a very difficult choice because both teams were exceptional. We were just talking about how when we were in law school, we can't imagine performing the way that you all did. So you should all be very proud of the performance this evening. Just some feedback for Team A. I noticed that you worked, or the first team, Kathryn and Rebecca, you worked really well together. It seemed like you kind of knew when one person was finishing a topic, the other one would start naturally. So it seems like you really had a good understanding of teamwork with regard to interacting with the client and taking time to let each other make your points. I thought it was also very good that you were able to hone in on one of the major issues from the beginning, which was that $35,000. So that was very good. Let's see, what else do I have here? I thought your recap at the end was good. You went through some of the major issues and you identified when you would be contacting the client and gave some definitive next steps. So good job, Rebecca and Kathryn. And then Robert and Ruchi. I really liked the beginning. Very hospitable with making sure the client was comfortable with water. I also liked the fact that you honed in on accounting and making sure that you requested the accounting records to see what specifically went on with that $35,000. I also thought that you were very good listeners, specifically letting the client talk and trying to see what other things were going on. So that was good. And in the end, I thought it was important that you mentioned the conflict check, because that is also, you know, something that's imperative when you're taking on somebody as a client. So again, great job, both of you. It was a very difficult choice. And I'm gonna now hand the mic over to Lisa so she can give some of her feedback.
Thank you, Judge. And again, to echo the judge's comments, exceptional job done by both teams.
Muted, Lisa.
Oh.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yes? Okay, great. Again, excellent job by both teams. The judges and I were discussing that it was really splitting hairs. So well done for both of you. For Kathryn and Rebecca, I thought you did a great job identifying the issues. I thought you showed a lot of empathy to the client and her concerns regarding keeping her work family essentially intact. I thought you were very thorough with your request for information and offered that you would certainly do the research that for information that you still needed to identify. You were very definitive as to when you would follow up with the client and actually gave a date certain. And I thought that was very helpful for a client to certainly know. So great job, Kathryn and Rebecca. Robert and Ruchi, I thought your opening was excellent. You really outlined the entire meeting and how it would unfold. You certainly, your housekeeping components, I thought were well articulated. You certainly talked about confidentiality, very important to give that comfort level to the client, certainly. asking for the timeline, asking for all of the information that was required to really delve into the accounting. I think that was spot on as well. So an excellent job. And it was a nice touch to offer water and hand sanitizer during COVID at this point in time. So great job. And I'll reserve comment because I know Steve has a few more things to say.
Great, and I agree with everything that's been said. I can't imagine if I was in your shoes as a law student conducting an interview like that. It's really, really extraordinarily well done. I think most importantly, and I'll first address the things in common, you both teams set the client at rest, made them feel comfortable. You asked open-ended questions. I think there's nothing more important than that. You know, to try to, you know, say, tell me about something, and not, you have said A, B, and C, is it Y? You know, you allow the client to speak, which is so important. I think Kathryn and Rebecca, you focus very heavily on what Alex's objectives were. And I think that's extremely important to find out, you know, what it is that they want to do, who they care about, and you explored whether they were willing to go through a litigation or not, which is a key thing to explore. Both teams used what I call active listening. I heard, you know, one of you say, I heard you say blank, or kind of summarize what they said just to make sure that you got it. And that shows the client that you're listening. Kathryn and Rebecca, you got closest to the ethical issue. You at least identified who was the client here. You didn't resolve it. You know, and sometimes it's best not to resolve that in the first meeting. And you came back afterwards and said, well, that's something we're gonna have to figure out. And I think that, you know, I don't know if they've told you what the confidential fact is yet, but that's something that the confidential fact makes extremely important. I think you early on identified the financial terms, which I think is really important. What you didn't do was to almost drill down on those financial terms. And if you had drilled down on them, you might have found out something that I don't know if they know the secret fact yet, but that's something I would have drilled down more on if I were you. I thought you concluded really well. You identified the documents you wanted. And as Lisa mentioned, you said, we're going to talk on Friday. Clients love it when you give them okay, this is a timeline that they can play into. In terms of Team B, Ruchi, you were all over the money. I think it took you a little longer to get to the financial terms, but once you did it, you wouldn't let it go. You kept asking questions, and you asked for an accounting, which I think is going to be really important. You explored other issues like business interruption insurance. That's something that could be a non-litigated solution. You did a good job exploring other options like mediation. And I think you, in your questions, you started off open-ended. I mean, I think your first question was something like, tell me why you're here, which is a nice kind of open-ended question. But then you nailed down and probed more deeply into them. I think you could have set a little more detail in terms of the date of the expectation of when you were going to get back to them. You said something like a few days or something, and that you could have been a little more precise on. One of the things, Bob, you did very well was to give some kind of top of the line explanation of legal concepts for a non-lawyer, but then say, I'm not giving you an answer here. I'm just, telling you what the kind of overall legal rubric is and the framework to analyze this, but we're going to have to look at these documents. One thing that you did do is I think you may have overpromised a bit on personal liability, and when you find out the confidential facts, you'll understand that. But you gave the basic overview of what an LLC is and the shield of liability. But I think, as we said, both sides did extraordinary jobs, and you really are to be commended.
So without further ado, we unanimously selected Team Robert and Ruchi as the winners of the competition. Congratulations. I don't know if we should, what do we do next? I'm not sure.
Well done.
Yes, congratulations.
Well, someone's going to go celebrate, but I think you should all celebrate because you all did really, really well.
Both teams, definitely, absolutely.
Hold on.
Donna Morse would be very proud.
Can we get a picture with the winners and the judges?
Yes, so next we would just like a picture with, we're gonna figure out our camera. Their winners right here, the judges on Zoom. But
The winners, or all four finalists stand in front and
okay.
actual photo. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think? Okay. All right, so judges, you can see this one.
Are you going to smile?
Okay, we'll do just the 7 A's and then just find and then the winner. How about that? Or, sorry, just the second and then the winner. How about that? There we go. Perfect.
And we look forward to meeting you in person when we actually can.
That's right.
You guys can move over to this. I'll show you this slide. Okay. All right. Good on that one.
Thank you.
Great. No one has moved.
Yeah, you want me to work on Yeah. One more picture. Perfect. Thank you so much. Again, I would like to take a quick moment to congratulate our winners, Robert and Ruchi. Albany has provided both of our finalists with prizes, and those may be picked up in Teresa Culver's office. I would also like to thank all of our judges this evening. We truly appreciate you volunteering your valuable time and judging with us. And finally, thank you to everyone who came in our audience in person and remotely. We appreciate you watching and your support for our two finals teams. And for that, have a good night.
So long, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good job, you guys. Those water bottles, man. Thank you so much. Oh, great. Wow. Oh, that's great.